Saturation is one of the most powerful, overlooked, and misunderstood tools in mixing. If you don't know what saturation is, or you don't feel you're using it to its full potential, do yourself a favor and stick with me just through this short video, because using saturation tastefully in your mix can make it go from good to great. Saturation is a natural combination of compression and distortion. It's traditionally caused by the incoming signal into the electrical components of a piece of analog gear being too much for it to handle. And when you would push these analog transistors to their limits, it would generate new harmonics and also apply soft knee compression. This is what causes saturation to make a sound feel more present, more punchy, even more full. Here is a single frequency generated and shown in a visual EQ. And now we add saturation. You can see it created a bunch of new harmonic frequencies. And this is what makes the sound richer. There are different types of saturation and different ways to use them. So in this video, we're going to cover the 3 levels of saturation. And disclaimer, no level is better than the other, as they all sound great when used properly for these different things, but some get a little trickier to pull off, so that's why there are levels to it. But it's nothing you can't do, my friend, especially as an Audio Edges subscriber. And make sure you stay until the end, because I'll tell you about a secret bonus level of saturation. Level 1, character saturation. A really common way this can be used is by adding a console emulation or a tape machine emulation to your tracks. Here's an example where I'm giving this entire mix some character using tape. This is a virtual tape machine, and I'll bypass it so you can hear the mix without it. And now let's add the tape. You can hear that little bit of natural tape saturation is gluing the mix together, making it feel more present, more full, and more cohesive. And even before the tape machine, I've been running it through this virtual mix bus, which is just emulating a classic analog console. But you can also use simple character saturation on different elements in the mix. For example, listen to this overheads track without any tape saturation. Now it's sounding pretty good, but to make those cymbals pop that last little bit through the mix, I'm adding a tape emulation here and just allowing for a little bit of saturation on the machine. Have a listen with it on. It's just this nice little bit of extra crunch on those cymbals. Have a listen in context. And these overheads are just another example of how you can add a little bit of character to the tracks within your mix using saturation. And level 2 is parallel saturation. So this time, instead of just adding a little bit of character to something, we're going to be duplicating the signal of the track you want to saturate, whether through a duplicate track or with a bus, saturating it heavily, and then blending it into taste in parallel. Here's an example. Here are the same drums again, but let's look at the drum bus. From the drum bus, I'm sending a duplicate of all of the drums to this parallel track, which I've called Crusher. And on Crusher is, you guessed it, saturation in the form of this Slate FG bomber. This is basically driving the drums and adding intensity with saturation. I've turned the Crusher track to 0 so we can blend it in. Now let's hear the full mix without the parallel drum saturation. And with. I also used parallel saturation on these rock vocals, which had to cut through and be more present in a really aggressive rock mix. Here's the vocal track, and I have 2 sends, vocal crush and vocal presence, going into these 2 parallel tracks. The first vocal is being heavily saturated and crushed, you could say, with this Devil Lock plugin, and the second parallel track is just targeting the mids of the vocal and adding a little bit of saturation with this lo-fi plugin. Here's the vocal without the parallel saturation.
We're all just counting down, our days are running out. We're also searching for the map to get us out.
And here's the vocal with the saturation.
We're all just counting down, our days are running out. We're also searching for the map to get us out.
Let's add some reverb and effects.
We're all just counting down, our days are running out.
And yes, it's quite a good amount of parallel saturation on these vocals, but in the context of the mix, it needs it. Have a listen to the vocal without the saturation.
We're all just counting down, our days are running out. We're also searching for the map to get us out.
And now with the parallel saturation. Listen to how the vocal comes more forward, is more aggressive and commanding.
We're all just counting down, our days are running out. We're also searching for the map to get us out.
And level 3 is multi-band saturation. This means splitting up the frequency spectrum of a track into different bands, which you can saturate separately, even just choose one of the bands to saturate, or use different styles of saturation on different bands. And though level 3 is sounding a little more complicated than the others, it's really not that hard. Let's have a listen to this bass track. Sounding pretty good, but let's hear it in the context of the mix. Now, I like the balance of the low end in the mix, but in terms of the bass tone, it feels a little bit muffled. I think it could be more present. To bring a little bit of that out, let's add some multiband saturation. What you can do with multiband saturation is isolate a band where the bass might be more present. I'm going to stay on the tape setting because I like how it sounds, and I can drive that band. And I can even boost it a little bit within this plugin. I'll fine tune this a little bit. And here are the settings that I settled on with this presence area saturated quite a lot more. Now let's listen to the bass without this, and then I'm going to add on this saturation in this band. Now, of course, soloed, this bass is sounding a little bit buzzy and crunchy now, but that's actually what's going to help it cut through the mix. Bypassed. And bass with multiband saturation. I use these 3 levels of saturation techniques every single day in every professional mix I do. The 3 levels are super handy and I recommend you get to know them. But there are also a couple bonus ways to use saturation. You'll see saturation come into play when using clippers, or when using exciters, or also when using an inflator, as some like to call it. And I'm working on a new video for that, which I'll be dropping next. So make sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you don't miss it. And if you enjoyed this, I think you'll love this video here. So click there next and I'll see you inside.